How will COVID, so two crystal ball questions, I guess. How will COVID play out? And maybe it's impossible to know because I'm asking the question thinking, how would I answer that? I have no idea. But also, if you were to, because you are a very smart person who's been in this business for a long time and you're talking to the people who actually sway things back and forth, how do you view the upcoming midterms and where do you think things stand as far as control of the House and the Senate and, that kind of thing?
I mean, honestly, when I try to ask these questions in the focus group, I get blank stares.
Yeah, it's not even on the radar, right?
Yeah, it's not on their radar screen. It's all, sort of speculation. And I get asked by people, the Axios folks, I get by friends in DC who work at associations, trade associations who ask me these kinds of questions. And every time I ask the respondents, and this is not just with Trump to Biden voters, it was the Obama to Trump voters, the same thing, or even any group of voters who don't spend their lives thinking about this stuff. There's a huge amount of tactical strategic thinking applied to voters who I have not yet encountered in my life doing this, having interviewed on how many thousands of people. The idea that, well, okay, I'm unhappy with the Biden on this, so I'm going to take my negative views about Biden and I'm going to apply them to the local congressional race, and I'm going to penalize my local Democrat because Biden screwed up and vote for a Republican. I mean, I don't think people think that way. I think what's likelier is that they're just not happy with the overall direction of the country. They're not happy with the direction of the pandemic, and sort of the national mood is the kind of thing that directs people one way or the other. Mm-hmm. That's what tends to be, I think, the larger impetus for people voting the way they do. And over again, these voters will tell me, I'm not voting the party, I'm not voting the ideology, I'm voting the person. Who's going to do a better job representing me? They're looking at it on an individual basis, not an ideological basis. So you got to be so careful with these projection type of questions, and you see, the generic ballot, who's going to vote more for R's, but vote for D's. The districts are so ridiculously gerrymandered by both parties.
Yep.
To the point where it almost is impossible to tell how all of this is going to play out, particularly after we had all the redistricting happen in the last year. Mm-hmm. So this is anyone's guess as to the way it's going to play out. And I would say, though, it would be great, obviously, for Biden if people feel better about things because their lives have gone more back to normal and because the pandemic has receded. If October feels like June of last year, Biden's in much better shape than if it feels like January of last year or December of last year, when we're feeling the full brunt of large numbers of sickness and death. So that's the way I would look at it. To me, I think that the swing voters are going to go the way the pandemic goes in large part. But I would say other things like inflation do matter.
Yeah.
And other things like crime. I'm going to be asking about crime actually next week. I really want to spend more time looking at it. I'll tell you just as a quick anecdote. I've had 3 different women in 3 different focus groups over 3 different months, just by complete coincidence, when I've been out talking about now what issues matter to you and that kind of thing, who've all talked about how bad the crime rate is in suburban Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Of all places, because I typically have 1 or 2 Georgians in each of these groups, and that seems to be something really on the minds of these particular women. I think most of them are moms, and the crime getting out of the city and coming into the suburbs. That has been a really major issue. And I think if if the crime is happening in inner city and most of these respondents are not inner city people, that it matters, but it doesn't affect their lives daily for the most part. When it starts affecting their local communities, that's when you start seeing the political implications of it. It's a big concern that I think Democrats are only beginning to wake up to the size and scope of the problem they face here.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think it goes to the very core of what you're talking about. If pandemic matters, inflation matters, crime matters, because these are things that people experience in their daily lives.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so if crime is on the uptick in suburban areas,
especially with the influence of suburban voters and suburban women in the last several elections. And you would think that, that we would understand that, both parties would understand that. These are your crucial voters, and if crime and inflation, the pocketbook issues, so to speak, are influencing the electorate, then we need to do something about it and do it quick, or else you're not going
Yeah.
to win the next election.
Yeah, exactly.